Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is Dr. Ferrer, your professor in research in social studies. This morning we will discuss descriptive research. First, we're going to define what descriptive research is. It is defined as the most widely used research design as indicated by theses, dissertations, and research reports of institutions. The primary aim of this type of research is to observe, to describe, and to document aspects of a situation as it occurs naturally. It includes studies that purport to present facts concerning the nature and status of anything. This means that descriptive research gives meaning to the quality and standing of facts that are actually going on. Other authors define descriptive research as a fact-finding with adequate interpretation. It may sometimes serve as a starting point for researchers to generate hypotheses or to develop a certain theory. So those are for the definition of descriptive research. Now let's proceed with the nature of descriptive research. First, it is designed for the investigator to gather information about present existing conditions. This means the focus of a descriptive research is more on what is happening at present, phenomenon or problems that actually exist at the time of study. Another is, it involves collection of data in order to test the hypothesis or to answer questions concerning current status of the subject of the study. In our previous discussions, we have defined already what hypothesis is and what theory is. So a descriptive research will help a researcher to test a certain hypothesis or to answer a certain question that concerns a current situation about a problem under investigation. And third, descriptive research determines and reports the way things are, meaning it has no control over what is, but it can only measure what already exists. So, descriptive research is more on dealing with studies that exist at a present time. Now let's proceed with the aim of descriptive research. One is to describe the nature of a situation as it exists at the time of the study and to explore the causes of particular phenomena. As what I am telling you earlier, this descriptive research most probably discusses or describes problems as it exists at the time of the conduct of the study, or for a researcher to explore what causes that particular phenomena to exist. The second aim is to tell what exists or what is about a certain educational phenomenon. Accurate observations and assessments arise from data that ascertain the nature and incidence of that prevailing conditions practices or description of object, process, and person, who are all objects of the study. So you can include in this type of research some incidents of an existing condition or a practice or description of a certain object or a certain process, or it can even be a person who can serve as the purpose of your research. Third is to reveal problems or some abnormal conditions that exist. You can also use this descriptive research. Then fourth is if you want to make some prediction of the future as basis of findings on prevailing conditions or corrections, and or in the basis of reactions of people towards some issues or certain issue. So using descriptive research, you can even predict some conditions that might happen in the future. And that also one of the aims of this kind of research. Another is to give better and deeper understanding of phenomenon on the basis of an in-depth study of the phenomenon. So since this research is more on describing what exists, so as a researcher, it might give you some better and deeper understanding of that particular phenomenon on that particular investigation. And finally, is this research provide basis for decision making. In this present times, decisions are most probably based from research results. So, using this type of research, decision makers can have sound decisions in a certain or particular issue that confronts their institutions or offices. Now let's have the design of a descriptive research. This makes some type of comparison, contrast, and correlation, and sometimes in carefully planned or orchestrated descriptive researches, cause and effect relationships may be established to some extent. So, descriptive research is designed for researches that makes comparison and contrast or correlation of variables, or finding some causes and effect of relationships among these variables. Those can be established by the researcher in this type of research. Now let's move with the classifications of descriptive research. We have the self-report and the observation classification. So when we say self-report, this is more on individuals responding to statements or questions about themselves made by the researcher. While in an observation, this is where data is collected by the researcher by watching the participants, either the researcher being part of the observation process, or the researcher merely observes the participants. Next is on the features of descriptive research. The first feature is descriptive designs are used to observe, document, and describe a phenomenon occurring in its natural setting without any manipulation or control by the researcher. As what I am telling you earlier, this type of research is more on a phenomenon that is existing or that is occurring in a natural setting. Then another feature is that descriptive studies provide a picture of a situation as it occurs in natural setting. That's why earlier in the classification of this type of research, observation is one of the method as it studies or as it tries to picture out a situation that occurs in a natural setting or phenomena. And again, this design does not involve the manipulation of variables. The researcher cannot manipulate data for this kind of research because he has to make generalization out of what exists on that particular situation. And another is variables are studied as they exist in the natural world. That's what I am telling you earlier. It is in the natural setting, so as the variables being studied. And it is used to develop theories, identify problems with current practices, make judgments, or determine alternative solutions for the existing practices. This is actually the primary purpose of having this kind of research, to develop a theory, to identify a problem or a current practice, and out of that to make some generalizations or judgments, or to determine an alternative solution as the case may be. And in cases where you use descriptive studies, bias is prevented through operational definitions of variables, by choosing a large sample size, and by using random sampling techniques in choosing your samples. And of course, by using valid and reliable tools of measurements in gathering your data, and formal data collection procedures. So these are actually the methodologies that you are going to use under the descriptive research. You have to define your variables operationally or as you use that in your study, and make sure to choose your sample size using the formula correctly, and selecting these samples randomly using the techniques in choosing samples, and your tools in measuring your variables, and the manner of collecting your data or the procedures you use in collecting your data should be valid and reliable. And last for this descriptive research are the types. We have 3 types of descriptive researches. First is the univariate descriptive design, the exploratory descriptive design, and the comparative descriptive design. So what is this univariate descriptive design? These are undertaken to describe the frequency of a phenomenon. This design does not focus on the study of a single variable, so meaning it uses 2 or more variables. The purpose is not only to describe each of these variables, but to establish relationship between these variables. So this design is primarily used to identify and describe, let's say, perception or awareness or behavior, attitude, knowledge, or practices of people. So, if your research falls under this form of description, such as perception, awareness, and the likes, then you have to use this univariant descriptive design. Okay, let's take this example. For instance, your research is you study to assess the experiences of patients suffering from COVID. So in this study, the researcher may describe the frequency of different symptoms experienced by the patients and the types of treatment they receive. So since your study is assessing the experiences of the patients, so what you're going to do is just describe the frequency of or how frequent are these symptoms are experienced by the patients and what treatment did they receive as they experience these symptoms. Now let's proceed with the exploratory descriptive design. This is used to identify, explore, and describe the existing phenomenon and its related factors. It is a deeper exploration and study of related factors in order to further understand about a less understood phenomenon. So from the word itself, exploratory, then it pertains to a deeper exploration and study of factors for a researcher to understand, to have further understanding of that phenomenon. For example, an exploratory study to assess the multifactorial dimensions of falls and home safety measures for elderly people living in selected communities in Rojas, Palawan. So since it is an exploratory study and it is a multifactorial dimensions which is being covered in the study regarding the falls and home safety measures of these elderly people. That's why the researcher have to make sure that the study is more deeper and it has to include all related factors for him or for her to fully understand the phenomenon being investigated. And the last is the comparative descriptive design. This involves comparing and contrasting two or more samples of study subjects on one or more variables at a single point of time. So this is usually used to compare two distinct groups on the basis of some selected attributes such as knowledge, attitude, and the like. So by the word itself, comparative, so it is expected that the research is more of comparison and contrast. And of course, it has to use two or more samples in this study or two distinct groups, and they are being selected based on some attributes. For example, a study or a comparative study on health practices among rural and urban or older people in Puerto Princesa City. So what are being compared here? The health practices among rural older people and urban older people. And what is that selected attribute? It is the older people in Puerto Princesa City. Okay, so that would be all, class, for this video. Just refer to your work text for your activity. This video is a part of the third chapter of your paper. Thank you.